question the character of Britain's Jack Harvey. He's not giving up. Is he in the 500 or is he out? Jack Harvey's in! Jack Harvey is in the Indy 500. Graham Rahal is out. What's this look like? 235 miles an hour to the yard of bricks. Who gets the pole for the Indianapolis 500? It's Alex Palou!
Welcome back to DIVEBOMB IndyCar Podcast with the Indianapolis 500 next week as we preview the greatest spectacle in racing and we look back to the dramatic qualifying that we have just had. We're looking forward to great spectacle in racing. There is one man we know who will not be there. Graham Rahal, the driver to be bumped out of the 2023 Indianapolis 500, and what a horrid month of May Graham Rahal had.
Yeah, it's been a shocker for the Rahal Letterman Lanigan team. They just could not find any pace really in any of their cars, especially their full-time cars, which was possibly the most shocking thing. And three of them in the bottom four shootout. It was a rough weekend.
Absolutely, 30 years since his father failed to qualify for the Indy 500. I think out of that team, you would have thought Rahal would be the one who would comfortably qualify after he almost won the race 2 years ago. And he was just slow all weekend. We were watching his qualifying runs on Saturday and almost wincing at how close he was to the wall and just how bad the car looked at every single corner.
Yeah, it was genuinely nerve-wracking watching all of their cars, but especially Rahal. I mean, there was one point where he was on the floor inspecting the car in pit lane, just looking for problems because it was just so dire. But in the end, it got past the point where they could have changed the car, gone to a backup because of the deadline on Friday. So they had to stick with it, and yeah, it didn't get much better.
Absolutely not. It only got worse on Sunday, where this wet jacket decided to fail on his run, and that probably ended up making a difference.
Yeah, I mean, by the end, it was 0.007 miles per hour between him and Jack Harvey, which equated to 0.044 seconds across the 10 miles, which is astonishing fine margins, but credit to Jack Harvey, who it was on his third run in last chance qualifying, if you don't count the quite interesting loophole they found by going out and running at much slower speeds to cool the car down. Yeah, he went out on that final run, engine boiling, and against the odds somewhat. I think they maybe found a few changes, and he managed to just edge it. I mean, it was dramatic. It was as dramatic as you can get, really.
Yeah, what a Herculean effort by Jack Harvey. I think after that penultimate run, we thought that's sort of that. It's got 5 minutes to cool down an engine because Indianapolis 500 dream is over. And then we have that stark news that, hang on, he's gonna go for another run. And against all the odds, he hit Rahal. And gotta say, Harvey, that third lap I think made all the difference. Where he hit, I think it was a 2:29.1, which was actually faster than his lap 2. And Harvey's consistency eventually got him into the field. Rahal was going to be unlucky, as I said, with that weight jacker issue. But wow, Jack Harvey kind of never give up spirit, which is always so important in this series.
Yeah, I mean, it's a run that will probably be remembered in years and years to come. A moment for the ages, really.
I don't think anyone thought that he would go out again after, was it the second attempt? I think everyone was like, okay, that's it, it's done. There's like a minute, 2 minutes left, and then he went out and he just completed like an amazing lap, like just got him in.
Yeah, I mean, I tweeted saying that's it, Jack Harvey bumped, and yeah, I certainly didn't expect that to happen, but hey, he's given us one hell of a moment to look back on. And I think one thing that was so impressive is both of them were so classy. Rahal in defeat, Harvey was sort of gracious in what turned out to be victory, because it was teammates against teammates for getting bumped, really, which was obviously such a hard situation for them. Rahal was absolutely crushed. He was in tears. He couldn't finish his interview. I think even Harvey, despite the joy of making the race, it kind of seemed more relief, and he didn't seem like he could fully enjoy it. I think it was just not a particularly enjoyable day for anyone involved in that last chance qualifying.
Yeah, very tough day for Jack Harvey in particular. When you think about this, probably one of the greatest moments of his career. I'm not going to say that's going to be the moment which saves his IndyCar career, but you feel like if he had got bumped, you can't see him lasting any longer in the series. But he pulled the rabbit out the hat to knock Rahal out.
Yeah, it did feel like it was his career on the line. Really, it was a massive run for him, and if he did get bumped, I think with his confidence already so low, it would have probably been debilitating for him, really. And yeah, in the end, it was just a kind of exemplification of how beautiful sport can be, but at the same time, how crushing it is as well.
Yeah, it's always tough. It's always tough to be bumped, and I think this year when you got only the one individual bumped, it's just so cruel. Especially for someone like Graham Rahal, who's had so much pedigree in the series, and he's just had such bad luck at this event. And he's obviously got a bit of a dodgy chassis this month, and they just never got going. Did Rahal? Not only him, but the rest of the team. And it's so tough to see. As we said in his interview, it's heartbreaking to see Rahal so emotional about it. But Graham Rahal is a Class 2 driver. He's a really honest guy, and I'm sure, and I really do hope that he will come back from this.
Yeah, I mean, I think if any of those four were to get bumped, I think Rahal, being the most experienced, was probably the one. I think, as I mentioned, Harvey's confidence was already so low that could have been disastrous for him. Then Rob and Lundgaard, they're young, and you don't know how a younger person may deal with that.
Yeah, I mean, Rob on Saturday looked in a bit of a state, didn't he? He was very shaky, he was very nervous, and he really did not want to come back for a second day. But he made it in the end. Both him and Lundgaard got the job done in one, which was handy for both of them.
Yeah, I think Rob's situation kind of showed the emotional toll that it can take, especially for a rookie. And that last chance qualifying, he said when they interviewed him on the broadcast that he just stopped crying. There was a video of his mum in tears as she embraced him. I mean, it's an amazing moment for him. I think it's more something that he can enjoy, given he wasn't battling against a teammate. And maybe on that, I just mentioned David Malukas before we go back to maybe speaking a bit more about Saturday later. But yeah, he put in a fantastic lap because he'd been down there for most of Saturday, sort of on the edge of maybe having to come back on Sunday. But I think he put in a huge lap. I think did he end up 23rd? It was an absolutely unbelievable run towards the end. And he's shown pedigree on ovals, but that Dale coin card did not look too friendly over the course of the weekend. But Malukas really hooks up a lap.
Yeah, one of the runs of the day for sure. He was looking at maybe coming back tomorrow. Then at the last gasp, just produced this four-lap run out of absolutely nowhere. His happiness after that was so infectious. I mean, the whole day Malukas seemed just really excitable. Even when people beat him, he would seem excited about it. But it's just so refreshing to see how pleased Malukas was. And it just shows what this means to people. Like, people are so overjoyed just to get in the field, and not even do well and qualify well, just to get in. Just shows the emotional tone of how great this event is.
Yeah, I mean, Malukas is a great character. He was on the broadcast eating an ice cream, and he just looked so relaxed. And there was, I think the camera maybe panned to him at one point when he found out that he would have to go and run again. Yeah, he just kind of looked like he'd almost jokingly was like, "Oh no," but then yeah, I mean, it didn't matter in the end because of that unbelievable lap.
So obviously Malukas probably not the only one to shine on Saturday. I think the bigger story after probably a bigger story than Malukas was Catherine Legg, the part-time Rahal entry, beating all her 3 full-time teammates.
Yeah, I think she was the fastest woman ever in Indy 500 history. I mean, to beat 3 full-time teammates, she hadn't competed or qualified for the Indy 500 for 10 years. And to come back, I think she's 41 years old now. That was an unbelievable job. I mean, she kind of all weekend looked like the Rahal car that would be least likely to be bumped or even have to contend for the last row. I mean, yeah, it's so impressive.
Yeah, Catherine Legg actually looked pretty comfortable all week. Whilst the other three, Harvey Rahal in particular, looked all over the place the entire week, she seemed like she'd qualify fairly comfortably.
Yeah, I mean, she was the one that many people tipped to be bumped as well. But there was maybe a bit nervy at the end on Saturday, but never really looked in doubt. And
Yeah, she only
on
did
that,
one run in the end, so
yeah, exactly. And on that as well, and someone else who only did one run was Archie Enerson in the Able Motorsports team, who have, this is their first IndyCar race. They've never competed or tried to qualify for an IndyCar race before, and he only did one run, and he was safe as well, which is a remarkable story, and that really shouldn't be overlooked.
yeah, what a story for Enerson, obviously missing the field 2 years ago, and he just looked in a part-time entry, as you said, he kind of a last-minute entry of a team who's never competed before, qualified, and it didn't even look close to having to come back on Sunday. So again, what a sensational effort from Marcy Enerson. And I must say, I'm starting to get into a habit of reverse cursing people. Start of the season, I said Canapino would be absolutely awful and be at the back every race. He hasn't been. He's probably been the most impressive rookie. And I predicted both Archie Enerson and Catherine Legg to probably get bumped. And both of them got through in one run. So if I say anything about you drivers, which is poor on the IndyCar podcast, take that as a blessing from now on, alright? I better keep my mouth silent on any predictions from now on, I reckon. And completing row 10, Callum Ilott. What an inspirational row that row 10 is. Moved to the spare car kind of at the last minute on Friday. And his first run, it wasn't great. But the second run pulled it out the bag to comfortably qualify for the Indy 500.
I mean, yeah, talk of Herculean efforts. I mean, I think at a few stages, Friday, even earlier, Wednesday, Thursday, it looked like Ilott could be the one that would be bumped. He was completely off the pace. He was having car issues. I think these were issues they had in the open test. They suffered for having the second day of the open test rained off, where other teams were like, well, it doesn't really matter because it's not very representative. But Bunkos could have done with that to try and iron out the issues then. But as it was Wednesday before they could sort of test the car again, and it was still poor. Then obviously moving to the backup car is a big decision, so it's not something they're going to take lightly. But I can't help but feel they took it a bit late on Friday. Ilott was initially, they didn't know whether he might only have the car ready for Sunday, which would have been catastrophic, really. He did a couple of hairy practice runs on Saturday morning, but immediately felt the car was better, and then managed to really hook it up on his second run in qualifying. And yeah, to qualify for the race without having to go through last chance qualifying after all of that is a massive effort.
Yeah, huge credit to him and Hunkos this week. Ever since the open test, he looked like he'd be in big, big trouble. And to pull out that run on a Saturday was absolutely sensational. And he did a second run quite early, actually, so he was fairly comfortable the rest of the day. And what a relief for him! If you said he wouldn't have had to return on Sunday on Friday morning, he would have been a very, very relieved guy. And credit to Callum Ilott for the effort he's put in there.
Yeah, I mean, I think the question now is, can they get the car tuned in for sort of a race setup? Because this was Canapino's car that he used in the open test, so it's not like it hasn't been used before. But it's whether now they've got 2 more practice sessions to try and get it to its optimum for the race. But I think just qualifying for the race in the first place, given the positions Ilott looked in at some points, that's a big achievement.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. At one point, I did think he was gonna be like in the bottom 4 and like get bumped maybe, because like all throughout the practices, he was being so low, and the car was just not great at all.
And then we've got his teammate, one of the favourites on this podcast, Agustin Canapino. I mean, there was never really any talk that he would be bumped, which is massive credit to how fast he has adapted to IndyCar. I mean, fair play to him. He was starting one place ahead of Ilott, and really, he's been the benchmark for the team over the the sort of week we've had so far because of the issues Ilott's been having. Ilott's been having to copy a lot of his setups, and yeah, Canapino's pace has been, it's been good. And he had a slight touch with the wall in qualifying on Saturday, broke a toe link, but then he just managed to hold onto the car, which was ridiculous car control because it was wiggling a lot.
Yeah, I mean, we do like Canapino watching the podcast, and this is obviously our Canapino watch segment. And boy, were we watching Canapino on his second run on Saturday. No one had crashed in week one, and Canapino was really pushing the boundaries there. Obviously, touched the wall, which broke his right toe link, and he was wobbling all over the place into turn two. And somehow he kept that car on a straight line in a very, very worrying moment for Canapino. And then in his interview, he looked fairly casual about it afterwards. So brilliant stuff from Canapino there. The touring car control really coming to his help there. And yeah, absolutely sensational rookie performance, as you said. Didn't even look close to getting bumped all week. And obviously, I'm not going to say him out qualifying Ilott is truly representative of their weeks, but it is still very encouraging for Canapino. And he's looked very comfortable in ovals so far. You would have thought ovals he'd really struggle on, but he's really performed yet again.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been wildly impressive. I don't think anyone expected this.
Least of all me in the season preview podcast. But I will admit my mistake there, as I did earlier for Enos and Leg. So that's enough towards the back of the field. Let's move to the front of the field, which was obviously the other big story on Sunday, with Alex Palou taking pole, and he will lead the field grade in next week's Indy 500. But just as it was at the back, it was very close at the front.
I mean, some of the speeds we saw from these top teams were just outrageous, and I think really Fast Friday set a precedent for what we saw for the rest of the weekend towards the front of the field. There were some record-breaking speeds. So on Friday, I think Sato set the fastest practice lap since 1996. It was the 7th fastest of all time. And by the end of Fast Friday, there were 4 of the 20 fastest times in practice since 1996 as well. Pato O'Ward set a 243 in the speed trap pretty early on Friday. And yeah, from there, the speeds just went up and up.
Yeah, Sunday morning, I think, was something out of the ordinary. We had 235s from Peterson. We had Ericsson hitting a 235, I think a 235.4 with no toe. And then come Sunday evening, Alex Palou and Rinus VeeKay both pull out a 235 on their first lap.
Yeah, I mean, and that was when conditions were perceived to be slightly less favourable as well. I mean, wow. You can't really say much more than that. I mean, it's just for the ordinary person, those sort of speeds are just unfathomable.
Absolutely, and we talked about how close it was to the back. It was even closer at the front, 0.006 miles an hour, over 10 miles between VeeKay and Palou. VeeKay must be absolutely gutted to miss out, but both of them have been really strong on the speedway in recent years. Obviously, both of them on the front row last year. VeeKay in his 4 attempts has always qualified in the top 4, and I don't think Palou's lowest qualifying is 7th. So both of them very strong in the speedway, and definitely have a need for speed.
Yeah, I mean, VeeKay, even when his performances maybe are a bit awry elsewhere, he always seems to find a way to, especially in qualifying, really do a job here on the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And yeah, Palou as well, he's leading the championship, and he was my pre-season prediction to win the 500, and it's looking good so far. But funnily enough, it's kind of a Honda in not a sea of Chevrolets, but it's been a Chevy weekend for a large part. But Palou's just, that's really impressive, especially considering Honda have had the odd issue. Jack Harvey's engine blew. Dixon and Palou both had to replace their engines heading into Saturday. But yeah, Palou seems the class of the field right now.
Yeah, absolutely. The Chevrolet is a really interesting point, as it was only Chip Ganassi was only Hondas to make it into the Fast 12, and then Andretti were pretty poor. Shank were pretty poor. Coyne was pretty poor. All round. Oh, Rahal, we don't even need to touch on how poor they were. But yeah, Honda really did not have a good day. But Chip Ganassi yet again just pushed the boat out. Absolutely remarkable times. But yeah, Chevrolet looking slightly on top as we head into race week.
Yeah, and I think when you speak about Chevrolet cars, you've got to speak about the AJ Foyt cars. They really
Absolutely.
turned it up. Santino Ferrucci, he's always been strong in races here. He's never finished outside the top 10. However, I don't think he qualified inside the top 15 before. Yet he was kind of up there all weekend, and he seemed disappointed with fourth, which is kind of a marker of how strong they were.
Yeah, I mean, he was second in the Fast 12, and it was very close between him and Rosenqvist in the end. And if you said to Santino Ferrucci comes the month of May, he'd qualify fourth and still be disappointed. He would have bitten your hand off. But it's just testament to how much work Foyt have done and how strong Ferrucci is around the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And not only Ferrucci, I think we do have to give a very special mention to Benjamin Pedersen, rookie of the season, qualified for the Fast 12, and he was very, very quick as well.
Yeah, I mean, we've not really spoken much about Pedersen before on the podcast because he's not really done that much to shout about. I think him and Rob have been the quieter of the rookies. Yeah, he really turned it up. He was secure inside the Fast 12 positions all of Saturday, and yeah, it was really impressive. And I think he's sort of putting his name out there now, and could be one to watch going forward.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the main one we haven't touched yet, Aaron McLaren, 4 cars within the top 9 of qualifying, and yet again they were very, very quick.
Yeah, I think Rosenqvist might be slightly annoyed that he didn't end up getting pole. He set the fastest time in the Fast 12. He set the fastest time on day 1 as well. Narrowly misses out in the end. I mean, this is the thing. We're talking about such fine margins, but didn't quite have it in the end. But McLaren will be very impressed. I think even Tony Kanaan, I mean, he said he was only going to do 1 run on Saturday. However, he ultimately, I think, ended up doing 3 or 4 and managed to get himself inside the top 9 for his final 500. That's, 3rd row. That's a strong starting position.
Yeah, talking of Canaan's runs on Saturday, I think it's probably better mention that dead heat between him and Carpenter, level to the 10,000th of a mile. Sorry, 10,000th of a second, over 4 laps, 10 miles of the speedway. Just testament to how close the margins are around here.
Yeah, I mean, in the time that they did that, they both got the same time of exactly 2 minutes, 34.7591 seconds, which is just astonishing, over 10 miles. I mean, it's like, it's a moment for the ages. I know we spoke about, there's a lot of moments for the ages this weekend, and that's testament to what a good qualifying weekend it was. But yeah, wow, it was ridiculously close.
Yeah, it just shows how close it is around here. And it's first ever dead heat they had in Indy timing. And I don't even know what to say. It's just such a crazy moment, and something probably never witness again.
No, probably not. I mean, what are the chances? Like, yeah, it's ridiculous.
Back to McLaren. Obviously, Kanaan final race this time around. He lines up 9th. Alexander Rossi, he might be slightly disappointed actually. He was he went very early on Saturday, ended up second most of the day before Rossi pipped him. He might be slightly frustrated that he didn't end up making the Fast 6.
Yeah, I mean, he was my pick for pole, ahead of the Fast 12 and Fast 6. Yeah, 7th, I mean, it's a good starting position. You can work from there. But yeah, I fancied him after sort of being at the top for so long on Saturday. Maybe he set his lap time in maybe less favourable conditions to Rosenqvist as well on Saturday. So yeah, he'll be disappointed, but I think it finally looks like he's got to grips with that McLaren car. I say finally, it's not taking him that long, but it's not taking him that long. But yeah, he's looking comfortable now, and I think he's definitely one to watch heading into the race.
Yep, you can never count out Pato Award round here either. He lines up 5th. That's his best start. So the 3 races he has started, he's ended up 6th, 4th, and 2nd, and he's always been very strong in race trim around Indy compared to qualifying. He lines up 5th, and he's definitely going to be a favourite on Sunday.
Yeah, definitely. He was, he only narrowly missed out last year. I think there's a lot of these young guns you've got to look at. Palou, VK, O'Ward, Ferrucci. I mean, it just shows, doesn't it, how the sort of breadth of talent in IndyCar. Because you've got Dixon's up there, albeit he didn't manage to get his 3rd successive pole. Then you've also got the young blood as well, and I think the series is in very safe hands.
If we look down the rest of the field, obviously touched on the fast 6. Row 3, row full of winners. Obviously got Rossi, Sato, who we haven't actually touched on, and Conor. Sato was classic Sato, balls to the wall, pushing the boundaries. He's obviously with Chip Ganassi Racing this year, and he's going to be bidding for a 3rd one. He's going to be an exciting one to watch.
Oh, it was fireworks every time he went out to run, wasn't it? He was such fine margins from the wall on a number of his runs. Yeah, as you said, he'll also be one to watch. I think, some tipped him for pole maybe. Didn't quite work out in the end, but he had a strong weekend nonetheless.
Yeah,
He was doing really well in practices as well, which is why I felt like maybe he could get a pole, because he was doing so well throughout. Was it like practice 3 and 5? He was like on top. So
yeah, Sato's always been strong around here, and I think he's definitely one to not count out. Count out on Sunday, and he's good starting position for him as well. So definitely encouraging for him, I reckon.
Yeah, and then you look a bit further back in 10th, Marcus Ericsson.
Yeah, very
defending
quiet
champion.
week for Ericsson, though.
Yeah, it was a sort of very Ericsson weekend because he often is quite quiet. But obviously again he can work from there. There's endless possibilities over a 500-mile race, but
yeah,
it was a quiet one for him, and he kind of looked like the maybe least competitive of, admittedly, a competitive Ganassi field.
Yeah, then obviously Pearson in the middle of that row, and then Will Power was the lead of the Penske's. And yet again, Penske can't really get up to speed around here.
Yeah, I mean, their cars actually look quite well balanced. They looked easy to drive, unlike, say, the Rahal cars. I know it's a pretty stark comparison, but the Penske cars looked pretty well balanced, and maybe going into the race, that could be something to keep an eye out on, even if their, single lap speed wasn't necessarily the best in the field. I think Power did a good job to get into the Fast 12, obviously the king of qualifying, but Newgarden and McLaughlin couldn't quite do it. I mean, Saturday it was quite nervy in the end because Newgarden went into the priority lane and basically just scrapped his run, and it was an all or nothing. If he made a mistake or something went wrong, that was it for him. He'd have to come back and contend for the last row. But yeah, it was a quiet one, really.
Yeah, definitely. I think Newgarden is starting to become a bit of a crunch time in his career to win in Indianapolis. His teammate Power said he didn't feel like he was a successful IndyCar driver until he won the race. And Newgarden, although he's younger than some of his peers, he's getting older now, and he does need to get that Indy 500 win under his belt if he wants to be considered an IndyCar great.
Yeah, and I think really he's got 2 championships. He deserves to get an Indy 500 at some point. I think there's not many people who wouldn't want to see that, but whether he can do it this year, he's starting 17th. It's not necessarily the best starting position.
No, but as we know, anything can always happen from that mid-pack. But it was interesting. You really think over a 500-mile race, qualifying isn't significant. But Helio Castroneves said, I can't remember where he started last year, but it was in the mid-pack. And he was like, it took me all race to get to 7th from starting the mid-pack. So just looking now, Castroneves started 27th last year. And so it took him all race to get to 7th. And it kind of highlights how important it is actually to get a nice start. Obviously, you're relying on luck and cautions to go your way, etc., etc. But qualifying is so important here.
Yeah, I think it's just important to start further forward because I think there was a stat only around 20% of pole sitters have actually converted it and gone on to win. However, I don't know the exact sort of proportions, but the further forward you start, you will be better placed because, as you said with Castro Neves last year, it is so hard to sort of work your way from that far back.
Absolutely. So move on to row 5. Ed Carpenter on the inside. Obviously, we mentioned his weird incident with Conor on Saturday. And he's one who's been looking at a 500 for a while. IndyCar Oval expert has taken 3 poles in Indy, but he just cannot convert it into a victory. He was very close in 2018, but he's still waiting for a victory on his end.
Yeah, and ECR, there were some weird disparities really between their cars because VK was again the fastest. He just looked rapid. Then Carpenter, it was fine margins that he didn't end up making the fast 12. Then Conor Daly, he swore on broadcast. I think it was as soon as they moved to NBC, first thing they heard was Conor Daly swearing inside his helmet, but he wasn't particularly happy. He didn't feel like there was the pace that his teammates had. But knowing Daly, he'll probably find some way to get to the front. He seems to be making a habit of doing that in what is his home race.
Yes, obviously led for periods in the last 2 years. Obviously, they didn't really end up too high in the end. But Daly's kind of started from similar positions in the last couple of years. And as we said, he's got to the front and he's looked at times to be challenging for victory. So you should say he won't be up there again. Look at outside of row 5. Carl Kirkwood is the lead Andretti, and what a dismal day for Andretti again. We saw Marco Andretti's bizarre outburst on telly about how we're not quick enough, and it's absolutely ridiculous. It's quite a weird little interview, that.
Yeah, I think he said they were embarrassing, which is quite a statement. He absolutely lamented this uncompetitiveness, and yeah, the reality is they weren't very competitive. Kirkwood was the most competitive, and he only managed to get to 15th, which is, it says it all, really. They never really looked like making any inroads into the Fast 12. Kirkwood, I think, was in there momentarily, but yeah, it wasn't a fun weekend for Andretti.
Yeah, Grosjean lines up 19th, Hertha 21st, Andretti 24th, and Di Francesco 26th. So very, very frustrating weekend for Andretti, and they don't look like the team that always looked like winning here a couple of years ago. Looking at Formula Andretti winners, Ryan Hunter-Reay is back. He lines up alongside Daly and Newgarden on outside of row 6. Competing for the Parliamentary of Dry and Rheinbod Racing. Nothing much to say about Hunter-Reay. Solid week in a car which looks really like a Hunkos, which is really distracting. But solid effort.
Yeah, I think, Wilson made the field as well, so it was a solid effort from the Dryer and Rheinbold team, a sort of Indy-only entry. So, yeah, I think they did a good job. They never looked in trouble. Hunter-Reay makes up a pretty exciting few rows in the mid-pack.
Yeah, nice little row there alongside Daly and Newgarden. All-American row, but all very exciting row. Looking back, we obviously got Grosjean. Again, fairly quiet week, fairly disappointing for Andretti, alongside Hurt on the outside. But in the middle, it's going to be the main man, Helio Castroneves. Can he win number 5? It's unlikely, but it was unlikely in 2021.
Yeah, he's shown that anything's possible. And I think something interesting to point out is because they've got this strategic partnership with Andretti. It's all quite consistent with Grosjean, Castroneves, Herta, Pagano. Then Malukas is in between, but then it's Andretti. They're all quite close together. It's quite consistent. I don't know how much the partnership with Andretti actually, factors into the performance of Meyershank, but yeah, they're all kind of clumped around there. I think one thing that was quite impressive, and I've noticed it with Pagano especially, he put in I think there were 2 runs where he put in ridiculously consistent lap times.
Yeah,
that's what you've got to do sometimes. I think one thing we saw across the weekend was there were quite significant drop-offs from lap times. You'd maybe see, say, from the cars further forward, a 2:34, but by the last lap, they'd be on a 2:32 or even in the 2:31s. I think maybe that happened with Ericsson. That was one of the issues that maybe stopped him getting a bit further forward.
Was a really bad one, I think, on his last 12 run. So yeah, definitely one one which, if you look at race pace, encouraging for sure. If you can keep coming back consistency up, obviously it's not great them starting in the mid pack, but it's something which they could definitely build on coming into race week.
Yeah, for sure.
Alongside them, as we said, Malukas and Andretti. Row 9 is Wilson, Di Francesco, and Canapino. As we touched on, the absolutely remarkable Row 10, all of their own different story to tell. Callum Ilott, RC Enison, and Leg. And the final row is going to be Lundgaard, Rob, and Harvey, with obviously being Rahal being bumped. Little bumping story for you. So obviously, we know how sensational bumping's been over the years, and Harvey will go down to history. Similarly to kind of the 2019 incident between Carl Kaiser and Fernando Alonso. Has anyone heard why Alonso got knocked out in 2019?
Go for it, Dan.
McLaren, this isn't the same Aaron McLaren as it is now. They formed a technical partnership with Carlin in 2019. Interestingly, had current McLaren driver Pato O'Ward as well as Max Chilton in their team. Now, McLaren paid Andretti Autosport, who by then were at the front of the Indy 500 quite regularly, $2 million. $2 million to get their setup, basically. And do you know where it all went wrong from now? McLaren paid $2 million to Andretti to gain their setup. What McLaren did is, instead of setting it in inches, like Andretti sent it to them, they put the setup in centimetres, which messed up all the gear ratios, meant that car was dragging along the ground, and because of a comical error from McLaren.
Yeah, I was just going to use that exact word. It's pretty comical.
Don't know how you make quite a mistake of that magnitude in the greatest spectacle in racing, but there you are. One of the funnier Indy stories which I found out this week. Things have got better since McLaren since then, I think it must be said.
Yeah, you'd think that they'd pay attention to that.
You'd hope so. Especially for someone like Alonso, who they've probably paid millions to get into the race, and obviously has literally got the world's eyes on him, and he failed to qualify. I mean, one of these remarkable bumping stories.
Yeah, that is
The Indy 500.
fascinating.
So there is your 33 drivers for the Indianapolis 500 and the one who didn't make it. Now, we made some predictions last week. I said Scott Dixon, and he said Callum Ilott, and Archie said, remind me.
Was it Palou? I'm going to say Palou. Here's my preseason prediction. So I'm guessing I probably stuck with that.
Yeah, Dixon's an interesting one because he's Mr. Reliable, but he doesn't seem to have the pace this year. I think Palou's going to be a strong bet. It's really hard to call. Honestly, I could see a surprise one. Let's go for Conor Daly.
Oh, that's pretty. Yeah, I think I maybe mentioned that. You know, if I wanted to see anyone win it, then it would be Conor Daly. I mean, that would be incredible, wouldn't it? I don't know. I think Palou really is probably still my favourite to win it. I think Ganassi have looked really as a team on the whole probably second to McLaren in terms of having all of their cars up there. Yet Palou has just been the class of that field, the Ganassi field. And I feel like if he can kind of extract that in the race, then he'll be hard to beat. I think Rinus VeeKay, if he can not make any mistakes.
Yeah, he hasn't tended to go too well in the races, as we've seen. Obviously, he crashed. It was the first to crash out last year, actually. And before then, not too much luck. So,
yeah, I mean, that's something that I actually mentioned from the week we've seen so far. There haven't been any crashes. Obviously, Canapino got close. On Saturday, but it's been an incredible job from all the drivers to keep it clean. I know as the race, it'll be hard for them to be an incident-free race, but I've been incredibly impressed with the level this week.
I mean, what we'll say, this was also the case last year, so we're recording this on a Monday, and Monday featured the first crash last year, which was Dalton Kellett. And then Herta had his absolute monster of an accident on Carb Day last year. So, still got 2 practice sessions. Don't quite know what's going to happen, but yeah, very, very clean from all the drivers so far.
Yeah, I think you can't undervalue how important these few days will be, actually, or these couple of days of practice that we still have, especially for the likes of the Rahal team, who I don't think they look quite as bad in the sort of running in the tow before the engines were turned up on Fast Friday, but especially as I mentioned for Hunkos, it'll be big for getting Ilott's car in the window.
Yeah.
But Rahal will obviously have some things to find, because it would be so painful if they had the same sort of performance. I mean, they were about 5 miles per hour off the pace. I mean, if they have that same sort of performance in the race, it's going to be just several laps down. So these are going to be important practice days for some teams between qualifying and the race.
Yeah, and as you said, no one's crashed so far this year, but it's so important not to crash this week. We saw what happened to Herta. He crashed on carb day, had to jump into the spare car, and his Sunday was just so bad. I think he retired in the end just because he was so slow.
Yeah, I mean, you can tell drivers have it in the back of their minds, because there is that peril. There's always the risk that, you know, when you're going at those speeds, something could go wrong and you could end up crashing. I mean, a lot of drivers decided not to go out on Saturday morning, for instance, in case they crashed before qualifying, because that would have been detrimental for their chances.
There's not much chance of recovering, I don't think. So big week in front of the drivers with these last 2 practice sessions before we kick off the Indy 500. You said Callum Ilott, your predictions, stick or twist?
Did I predict him to win? Yeah, I did.
Yes.
I'm gonna change that. I feel like IndyCar is very unpredictable. I feel like anything could happen. So it's a small possibility, but I think with how hard the drivers have been saying it is to kind of make your way through the pack, I think it's very unlikely. I don't know. I feel like if I feel like if Felix can keep up with the times that he was in practice and keep the consistency that he was, I feel like he definitely has a chance of like winning or at least being on the podium. But I don't know. It depends also if Alex Palou can stay ahead of or stay in the lead. Because if he can, then that'll be amazing. But something will probably happen where he'll drop down for like a little bit.
Rosenberg's actually a very underrated shot, I reckon. Last year he was right in the mix, and he's probably looked the quickest of the McLarens this year. So Rosenberg's actually is probably a decent shout, to be honest.
Yeah, I think it maybe is notable that he's only 1 spot away from O'Ward, which, I mean, you see a lot of teams, if they do have drivers in tandem, swapping positions to try and fuel save. I think, again, though, the top 4 drivers all from different teams, so that could throw a different strategic element into it. But the thing is, you're always one multi-car crash towards the front away from everything changing, and that's when you get a surprise winner. And I think, really, what I want to see from it is a first-time winner, and you want an unexpected winner. I think, you get an unexpected winner, that driver will be down in IndyCar folklore forever.
Yeah. And none of the top 5 have actually won the race before, so interesting caveat in the mix there, heading into Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested to see what Ferrucci can produce, because never starting inside the top 15, now he's starting inside the top 4. I mean, he's always made it up into the top 10. I mean, what can he do? Can he work forward from there? It'll be fascinating.
Yeah, dare I say it, Ferrucci probably wouldn't be a very popular winner, but he would certainly be a remembered one. Let's say that.
Yeah, I'm not sure many people are reveling in his success, including a lot of the drivers. I don't think this is a remotely unpopular opinion.
Yeah.
I think, it was interesting watching the press conference, because I think he was in the press conference once or twice. Even if he says something that's meant to be funny, you see a lot of the other drivers just staying there straight-faced. You had the whole debacle when Newgarden had his crash at Iowa, and it was doubtful whether he'd be able to race in the following race. And Ferrucci had tweeted, I think, or something.
Yes.
And he spelt Joseph's name wrong. And that became a running joke for a while, but I think it kind of just showed that even the smallest thing, and Ferrucci will get drawn up on it. I don't think he is the most liked. I mean, I think Conor Daly was talking on his podcast about a little incident he had that no one saw at the Indy GP with Ferrucci, where Daly does not like Ferrucci. They've got history. Daly basically said he drove Ferrucci off the track just because he just wanted to, and then Ferrucci, despite Daly then later in the race just letting him by because he was a lot faster, Ferrucci decided to sacrifice like 3 or 4 seconds by just driving into Daly.
That's actually, forget Crosby Senna, we got Daly v Ferrucci to worry about. That is actually quite funny.
Imagine those two in the lead.
It's not impossible.
Late caution, Ferrucci leading Daly away.
I'm going to see some Japan 90 vibes when Ferrucci just drives into him just so he doesn't win.
Talk about fireworks. That would be quite something. That's my dream scenario, actually. Daly in pursuit of Ferrucci gets him on the line. That would be, yeah. That's what I am fantasizing happening.
What's going to happen is Daly's going to come around the final corner, and what Ferrucci's going to do is slow down the last 2 laps to act as a lapped car and basically take all the air away from it, like it happened to Hildebrand 2011. And we'll see Daly crash in the final corner and someone else swoop by to take the victory.
Oh, that would be remarkable.
What are our favourite liveries of as we head into race day?
I think I like Newgarden's shell livery. I think that's pretty cool. And I like McLaughlin's Pennzoil Yellow Submarine as well. I think they're my 2.
Yeah. Canapino's Argentine football thing. I don't think it looks amazing, but just the concept is just absolutely incredible. It's just so random that it's just really amazing. And I've got to say, I can't avoid one of the McLarens because all their liveries look so good. My favourite, probably Rossi, but all 4 of them look really, really good. So those are probably my 2 favourites.
Yeah, actually, I think we might have touched on McLaren's liveries, and I also said Rossi. I think he seems to be the one that not many people are talking about, but I think it just kind of looks the cleanest. Rosenquist is nice, obviously. That's the one that many people talk about, and O'Wards as well, Canards too. They all look good, don't they? But yeah, and I think on Canapino too, the fact that his crew are all wearing the Argentine colours on their race suits, or their suits, or that's pretty cool as well.
I'm not gonna lie, I kind of forgot about every other livery because all I could focus on was Ferrucci's livery. I'm not gonna lie, that was the only one that was like I could see.
Oh god, this is yeah. It's going back to episode 1 talk. That was yeah. Ferrucci's livery is it suits Ferrucci, to be fair, with his wild hair.
Oh yeah, how does his hair look so good after like going around with the helmet?
Yeah, it's just, you take his balaclava off, and it's just automatically like that. It's bonkers.
I think there was someone. I think he met. Was it like it may have been a fan or it may have been someone that he knows, and the camera went to him, and someone went to touch his hair.
Some people get really bad helmet hair. Pato O'Ward's one of the worst for helmet hair. His is really bad. Graham Rahal, poor lad. I don't know touch him more, but he got quite bad helmet hair, must be said.
Yeah, I think I noticed Callum Ilott as well. His hair seems to go like incredibly flat when he takes his helmet off.
That's why most drivers put the caps on straight after they get out of the car.
That's exactly what I was just going to say.
Cover up the mess.
Obviously, been a week full of stories and surprises, but what is our kind of takeaway of the week? What's our story of the week?
I mean, I think I'm not going to say the whole week is my highlight, but I think the whole week has just been so entertaining. I mean, even practice sessions, 6 hours of practice, it's just every bit of it is captivating. The speed is just incredible. I think Sunday was quite something. I mean, it was exhausting. It was sort of mentally draining, and you can't imagine the emotional toll it would have taken on the drivers. So obviously Sunday, that's where a lot of the headlines are. I think my story of the weekend is probably Callum Ilott. I think it maybe has gone a bit under the radar because of, the drama of the bump on Sunday especially. But I think the story of Ilott just getting into the race and avoiding having to be a part of that, just quite dreadful day. It's a day that's necessary, the bump day. You know, it makes the 500, but you know, you feel for anyone involved. But yeah, I think Ilott's recovery from, I mean, he did basically, I think, in about 12 laps or so, in like a few practice laps and then one qualifying run before he went into his run that ultimately qualified him. In that short period of time, he did what most of the other teams had done in an open test and in 3 days of practice with this new car, which is a completely ridiculous effort. I've written a piece on this. I think that should be out by the time this podcast is out. But I think that deserves a lot of attention.
Yeah, I feel like there were so many little stories and like stuff just going around the whole like week and the weekend. But I really like how it was some of like the fastest times in like practice and in quali. I I don't know, I like the fact that even when someone sets kind of a record and you're like, there's no way someone's gonna beat that, but then when someone can do better than that, I feel like it just opens up so much like possibilities in that. And I really like how like the times are just like they're never the same, they're always changing, and I just like that. So I guess that was my little stories.
I think one thing that I would point out is that a 2:31 was too slow on Saturday to get into the field, into the top 30, which is just mind-blowing, really. It was the fastest field, it was the fastest last row,
Fastest front row.
fastest front row, the fastest woman, the fastest pole speed. It was just everything. Like it was a weekend where records tumbled, and that's
Absolutely.
something that really needs to be pointed out.
I think for me, a bit predictable, but I think Catherine Legg's story is one to really highlight. Hadn't driven an IndyCar for 10 years. I think when she got the call up, everyone was a bit, what? But she's looked the most comfortable out of her whole team, despite having 3 full-time teammates. She qualified for 1 run on Saturday. She's just looked comfortable all week, and again, a great inspiration for any female racers out there. It's Catherine Legg, first woman since Di Silvestro in 21. And it's nice to see that representation in the field again, especially from someone's unexpected, someone that probably unfairly I predicted to get bumped. So great inspiration, Catherine Legg, and a great story for her.
I can't wait to see how like well she'll do in the race next Sunday to kind of like because she did so well in comparison to other well, she did better than her teammates like this weekend. So I like to see how that will like transpire and all of that onto Sunday.
Yeah, I personally like the fact that a lot of these sort of headlines from the weekend are from the back of the field. And I think, as I touched on, that shows the value of a bump day as much as it is an emotional roller coaster. And kind of the emotion after it was just you were gutted for Ray Hall. You're even like, you know, the heart. You can't imagine how Harvey must have felt because what a moment. But at the same time, like he clearly genuinely felt like crushed by it. And I don't know, I think there's some stuff maybe to touch on with the bump. It felt slightly unfair that Ray Hall only got 1 run. I mean, that's how it works, and fair enough. But is there a better way they can do it?
Interesting. It does keep the drama right to the end, but maybe how they do it with the fast 12 is a fairer method. Everyone gets 1 run each, but then again, you kind of miss out on these magical moments you get with bumping. So it's an interesting one.
Yeah, I mean, something I've seen is that maybe Sunday is just for the fast 12, and after the 7 hours or whatever it is on Saturday, then the bottom driver gets bumped then.
Yeah, maybe.
That's a decent solution because over 7 hours, you know, you get the time to run again if you need to.
Yeah.
But I think as its own event, I think that just adds to the drama. I mean, everybody's talking about it. Like, it's all over motorsport social media, I think. I've even seen polls where people are saying they're looking forward to the Indy 500 more than the Monaco Grand Prix, which is, understandable because the Indy 500 is a much greater spectacle. But, you kind of have a feeling that people might be just ignorant of it, or like, oh, Monaco's iconic, as much as, maybe the race there isn't great. And we all know the Indy 500 is the greatest spectacle, I must say. But yeah, it's good to see IndyCar has got quite a lot of recognition over this weekend.
I mean, it's boring, but I think the real winner this week, yet again, was IndyCar. There's a lot more eyes on it this year, just because of the nature of how F1's panning out right now, and because of F1 got cancelled. I think people realised it was on and tuned in. And yet again, the real winner was IndyCar. And I saw this absolutely brilliant tweet. And I was like, what sport gets you this gassed over who's last? And it's just so true. I mean, the amount of stories and all the anticipation, excitement over who comes last just tells you everything you need to know about IndyCar.
I mean, there's just some great things to take away. I think the grit and determination that Harvey showed to, pull through that final lap and improve on his third lap, and that final run and improve on his third lap. That was mightily impressive. But then I think a lot can be learnt from the class that him and Rahal both showed. I think, Hammer, you're a classy man. Yesterday was a truly bittersweet day for all at RLL. The pain is shared by us all. Hate that we had 3 in the final 4. Hate one of us didn't make it. Graham is an amazing mentor and he's an unbelievable friend. You're a great ambassador for this team, our sport, and I'm proud to be your friend. I mean, that just says it all. I think that exemplifies the camaraderie within IndyCar. I think, that's just if you face up to the adversity that Rahal faced up to and the tough situation Harvey had to endure despite, qualifying. I think, there's a lot to take from that.
I tell you, so we're recording on Monday. I tell you what news we haven't got yet. Milk choices. I'm waiting. There's no Montoya, so we won't get any chocolate milk requests this year. Hopefully
that was my thought. Is anyone going to go for the chocolate milk?
So no Montoya, so probably no chocolate milk. Rahal jokingly last year that as chocolate milk isn't an option, I go for 2%, but I don't need to worry about Rahal now. One really weird thing, Marcus Armstrong was asked what milk choice he wanted. No idea why, but there we are. Bit of a problem for Armstrong though next year. He's vegan. So I don't know what he's going to do. He might have to do a Fittipaldi, which would be controversial.
I always find it weird, the pouring of the milk over their heads, because they all regret it instantly. I know it's kind of tradition, but I think...
Well, the tradition is to drink it.
Yeah, but it seems to be a thing now that they just pour it over their heads. And I think Ericsson was complaining last year that he did it, instantly regretted it. He stunk for the rest of all of his media commitments, getting the trophy. I think, just drink it.
Yeah. I wonder if we are going to get any weird choices. Maybe Captain Evans might get strawberry milk if he wins again. I'm disappointed that we can't actually chat about the choices because we don't have them yet. But watch out for our Instagram. As soon as they're up, the milk choices will be there for you to share. And if there's any controversial ones, you'll be made aware of it. But no Montoya, so hopefully this year we should be fairly okay. So there we are, lots to chat about, and we can't unfortunately go on forever, so I won't take up too much of you guys' time. 1 week to go, the greatest spectacle in racing. We've chatted every driver in the field and all the possible outcomes and scenarios. Great spectacle in racing, we've said it before, we'll say it again. There's nothing quite like the Indianapolis 500. Which driver is going to write their name into the history books and have their first echelon for the trophy? We've made our prediction, it's time to make yours. Please comment below on who you think will be crowned the Indianapolis 500 champion. That's all from us. Thank you again for the team for joining me for another brilliant podcast. And this time next week, we'll be back with you. With a new Indianapolis 500 winner. Thank you for watching. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll see you then.